Hey everyone, it's Rebecca, and today I want to share with you some of my family's very favorite read alouds that we have enjoyed over the past 15 years of our homeschool journey. Several of these books we've read more than once and we've enjoyed so much, and so I just want to share them with you and tell you a little bit about what we like about them. So reading aloud in our homeschool is really just kind of the backbone of what we do. I really enjoy reading aloud to my kids. We usually do that first thing in our homeschool day. We'll sit down and we'll have like a chapter book to read aloud. We do a Bible devotion. We will read either like their science or their history for that day, and sometimes we might have some little short stories that we read along with it as well. These are going to be all like long chapter books that we've read, and so if you're not familiar with all the benefits of reading aloud, I just highly suggest that you search that and look it up, because there's so many benefits to reading aloud. Kids learn so much. They learn to sit still. They learn language. They learn reading. It helps their reading. And so like I said, I would just look into that for all the benefits, just so you know. And, we start with our kids as soon as they can sit up really and look at picture books and look at board books. We start reading aloud to them, and then we just gradually increase the span of books that we read. But if you're just getting new and your kids are a little bit older, definitely don't expect for them to be able to sit for long periods of time if they're not used to reading aloud. When our kids were younger, I would let them sit and play Legos or toys on the floor. Sometimes they would just be playing as I might be reading to their siblings, and they would pick up on a lot of the things that were going on in the books even at very young ages. But I think it's so good for kids to just be quiet and listen. They are going to need that skill later in their life, whether if they're just listening to adults talking, sitting in church, going to weddings or funerals or things like that. It's just such a great skill to know. And it's just great that you can share these stories with your kids. It puts them into the life of somebody else in a different time period. It places you in that time period and their situation of what they're doing. And it helps you gain more empathy for people with what they're going through. It opens up your world. That's some of the reasons that we really enjoy reading aloud. And as well as just the bond that it brings between you and your kids. You get to have these inside jokes from different stories you've read together. You laugh about things, and it's really fun. We're going to start off with one of my very favorite series. This is the Little House series, which if you're in the homeschool world, lots of people talk about these. Now, I want to first say, if you're just only familiar with the show, the Little House series, this is a whole different situation. Yes, there are some similarities, but the books are totally different. I'm not a huge fan of the show, but I love these books. They talk about basically the pioneers and them going out west and settling, and different encounters that they face with the Indians, with other settlers there, the things they had to do in order to make a homestead. They had to plant certain trees and do different things. And Laura and her family moved several times in different locations, tried different things out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. And it just follows along the story of her life from a young child up until she gets married. So there's 9 of these books. It starts out with The Little House in the Big Woods, and they were in Wisconsin. And they're in the big woods, and there's lots of stories about that. I love the story about her grandpa and the panther in there. That's just he encounters this panther as he's coming home one night. That's a really interesting story. There's it talks about Ma in here when she starts butchering the pigs and all the things she makes, and it goes into great detail of all the things she does. She uses the whole animal. It's very interesting what they do. They talk about the kids and the chores that they have to do to keep things going. I mean, just to be able to sustain a normal life day by day was so difficult. And then they move out to the prairie in Little House on the Prairie. This one's Little Town on the Prairie. That's a different one. But so Little House on the Prairie, they move out to the prairie. They live out there for a while, and they have to end up moving back. And then we have Farmer Boy in the middle here, and this is her husband when he was a child. It is based in New York State. Talks about him raising calves. He's really interested in raising horses because that's what his father does. And they have lots of great food to eat in this book. It's so amazing. I will talk about him sitting down and having all these sausages and bacon and pies and all this stuff, and they just keep filling his plate full of food and all the wonderful things he had to eat. And so I was reading this a few years ago, and my neighbor was also reading it with her kids, and we decided to get together and just have a giant breakfast, kind of like they did in this book. And so she made a whole bunch of food, I made a bunch of food and brought it over, and that was just really fun because, like I said, we were both reading it at the same time, and we got to do kind of a fun little party like that with the kids. And you can always come up with so creative things to do with your kids throughout these books if you want to, or just have the beauty of enjoying reading the books. So that one is, I think this is the third or fourth one, I can't remember how you read it in that series. So this book is The Long Winter, and it is they're in Dakota territory that they move out there, and they were not prepared for this really intense winter that's coming on. They have blizzards, and blizzards, like I want to say like every 7 years is a really bad winter, and every like third of those 7 years is even like really intense. And so they end up having to leave their homestead and move into town, and they almost starve to death. It's really good if you can read this in January when it's already cold outside. It seems like it's lasts forever, but it kind of really shows you what they go through. They're waiting on this train to come in. It can't get there because of the blizzards, and they just kind of have to find whatever food they can source it, and they grind wheat and make bread every day, and that's basically how they survive until the blizzards stop coming and the train is able to get there. So, and then, Almanzo has moved out there, and he's in this book as well. And then it kind of just takes you up to the first 4 years when they get married and when they start having their family and stuff. So you can take, a year to read these, 2 years. They actually have whole curriculums that just go with these books that kind of put it all together as like a unit study. Like I said, it's a full curriculum. So that's something cool if you want to do that. So next, on kind of the note of the same situation as pioneers and going out west and that sort of thing, is these books, the Little Britches series is what we call them, by Ralph Moody. And his family moves out west, and they're going to be ranchers, and it just talks about their story and the things that they go through. And there's a whole series of these books too. It's kind of like the boy version of Little House on the Prairie in a way, but it's different. It's like a little bit later time period. It's like in the early 1900s or whatever. And one part he goes to live with his grandpa. One part they're in town. He works for a store. They just had some really difficult challenges and stuff they went through. We started reading these when my kids were a little bit younger, and I just didn't finish the book, couldn't get really into it. And then we started reading them again when my boys were kind of in that like 8 to 12 age range, maybe even a little bit older, and it was the perfect time. They absolutely loved these stories, and we worked on reading them throughout that whole year. So I do think there's a little bit of cussing, especially in the first book. I don't know if the other ones have as much, but I just kind of glaze over that if I'm reading it, and just don't read that part to them. So, but otherwise, really super great books. Now we're going to talk about Evie White books. So this is The Trumpet of the Swan, Stuart Little, and he has Charlotte's Web also. These are just such fun books. They're like from an animal's perspective. The Trumpet of the Swan is about a swan. Then you've got the mouse is Stuart Little, and then Charlotte's Web is the pig and the spider. And they're just really fun books to read to little kids and even on up. Like just very enjoyable. I remember my mom reading The Trumpet of the Swan to us, and I've read it several times to my kids. And there's a lot of stuff about nature, especially in that one. The little boy in there, he writes in his journal, and he talks about the swans and stuff. And so these are just really great, enjoyable books. Okay, Where the Red Fern Grows. This is probably one of my all-time favorite read alouds. Just the way the book reads. The author, Wilson Rawls, is just incredible. Like makes you feel what this boy is feeling. He wants these dogs so bad, and he saves up this money and he gets these dogs, and it's amazing. Like, I highly recommend. I had only seen the movie of it, and the movie is kind of cheesy and not super great, but then I read the book to my boys several years ago, and I was just so enthralled by how, like I said, how amazing the writing was. Now, it is sad. It does have a sad ending, but definitely worth the read. All right, then we've got Pippi books. This is Pippi Goes on Board and Pippi in the South Seas. These are just super fun, hilarious, fictional books. Just sometimes you need something that's just funny and lighthearted, and these are some of those books. So this is I don't know which one it is. There's one of them that's the first one. I think it's just Pippi Longstocking is the first one. So if you can find that one, those are really good. Rascal. This kind of reminded me a little bit of Where the Red Fern Grows as far as the writing and stuff. It was just really good about a little boy and his raccoon, his pet raccoon. This one, it was my first time reading it just a couple years ago, and we really enjoyed this one. Homer Price. This is just another one of those fun books about a boy that he's getting into trouble, and he always seems to be something happening. There's a story about a skunk. There's a story about donuts, So if you wanted to, you could, that's the chapter about the donuts. You could, make donuts when you read that chapter. You could go buy donuts or something, do something fun like that. That's a great book. The Sarah Plain and Tall series. Now, this is a little small chapter book. There's several of these. There's like 4 of these to go with it. It's really just a great story about this family, and they've lost their mom, and the dad writes for a wife, and they ended up getting a wife from Maine, and they're out on the prairie. It's just a big change for her, but she does really good, and there's movies that go along with this as well, and those are really good movies. So Sarah Plain and Tall and Skylark. All right, we've got Winnie the Pooh. And this one is The House at Pooh Corner. So these are just delightful books. They're just older. The way they read is very different. They're just fun. You get to know Pooh and Piglet and all the animals. I mean, it's not much different than the cartoons you've seen, but it was just very enjoyable to read together as a family, and there's fun little things they do. I know when we were reading it one time, they do a game called Pooh Sticks, where they will drop a stick on one side of a bridge, and they go to the other side and see which ones got through the bridge the quickest. You see how you look at how long your sticks are, so you know which one's coming across first. And I did that with my kids. We went down after it had been raining a whole lot. We went down to a bridge close by and did that. And so just fun little entertaining things like that can make good memories with your kids. This one is Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. So we usually read this when we're studying like American history, but I'm going to read you the back what it says. It says, "The romance of old Salem, sailing ships, the adventure and legends of the sea, and the perseverance and integrity of a boy are skillfully combined in this very readable biography. A thrilling and challenging story of a mathematical genius, Nathaniel Bowditch, who fought the handicaps of physical smallness, poverty, and superstitions, and wrote the American Practical Navigator." So he was just like a super intelligent guy that was great at math. He started going sailing with these people, realized the books that they were using were wrong. The calculations in them were wrong, and so it was causing them to get off course. And he ends up rewriting the whole thing and stuff. And I just really enjoy this every time I read it, just seeing how smart he is. And it's really different. So we enjoy that one a lot. Okay, this is the Prince Warrior series. There's 4 in this series by Priscilla Schreier. Now, this is similar to Narnia in that it has a lot of spiritual significance. They go to like an alternate universe, and they're fighting in the spiritual world. And my kids loved this. We've read it twice, and it sparks a lot of discussion about spiritual things and stuff. I even really enjoy it as far as seeing the spiritual connections and stuff with it. And so like I said, there's 4 of these. My kids keep asking me, read another chapter. So that's when you know that it's really good. All right, few more we have is Cheaper by the Dozen. Now this has the picture of like the movie that came out several years ago on it. This is not a current day book. It's back in like the 1920s, 1930s, something like that. It's about this man, and he has 12 children. Him and his wife have 12 children, and he's an efficiency expert, and she helps him as well. And they go into factories and they help these places be efficient. And he does all these experiments with his kids, like typing, and they do surgeries and different stuff, and it's so funny. The stories in it are really funny, and it's true stories, and it's really good. So so that's a great one. And then the sequel to it is Bells on Their Toes, and that's kind of like when they're a little bit older. It has a few more stories and stuff in it in there. All right, and then last but not least, I have the Beverly Cleary books. These are just those fun books. They're good for kids to read on their own as well, but sometimes if I don't have something for my kids to read, or if I don't have a read aloud for my kids, I will just pick one of these out just because they're funny. This one I remember being really funny. We laughed and laughed on this one. And then of course there's lots of Beezus and Ramona books, lots of Ramona books, lots of Henry Huggins books. There's one called Socks that we really like. And so these, like I said, these are just some of our favorite books. I'm sure we've read lots more over the years that I've probably forgotten, even some of them that we really liked. But I hope that helped you somehow. And maybe if you haven't read some of these books, you can try them. And if you have certain books that you've read and your family has really enjoyed, please let me know down in the comments.